Hey y'all, it's Adam. I want to bring you another wheel class today. This time we're going to focus on our back bends, hip flexor openers, and full camel pose. So versions of Ustrasana. So grab your wheels and we'll get started with rolling out our backs. So bringing our feet hip distance apart. Take the wheel, place it about your mid-spine. Hands come out either side for support. And then we'll lift and bring our bodies onto the wheel. Let the head drop back is what feels comfortable for you. Let the arms open up wide to sort of peel the chest open. And then hang out here for a couple breaths. So find some comfort here with the wheel about mid-lower back. Arms open wide. Take a big breath in. Open mouth, exhale. One more like that. Inhale, feel the chest swell open. And on the exhale, feel your back just melt into the wheel. Beautiful. Now from here, let's roll out our spine. We'll go from the tailbone all the way up to the neck, and then back down to the tailbone. We'll do that a couple times. Any spot that you want to hang out in and find a little bit longer of a hold, you're welcome to it. Find your breath here. Long inhales and exhales. Now from here, if you want to start to add your shoulders into this, we will work into a shoulder grab today. So bring the wheel to about the base of your spine, or base of your neck, sorry. Grab the wheel with both hands. Let the elbows come in next to your ears so you have a nice rotation for the shoulders. And then we'll slowly start to press back into the heels and start to drive the elbows towards the ground. Now from here, once the elbows touch the ground, see if you can let your hips start to get heavy and pull your hips towards the ground. Start to intensify that upper back bend. Keep the elbows pressing down. You can walk your heels in a little bit closer towards your glutes for a little more support. Nice, wherever you're at, take 2 more breaths. Let those hips be heavy. One more breath. All right, now slowly start to dig into your heels. Pull your glutes back down to the ground. Release the wheel. And we'll bring our hands to the front of our shins and slowly bring ourselves forward. Hug the shins, tuck your chin to your chest. Lift through the crown of the head, take a breath. Squeeze towards center with a long spine on the exhale. All right, and slowly release. All right, we're going to move into a one-armed melting heart on each side and then hit up both shoulders at the same time. So first off, melting heart, knees are hip distance apart, maybe a little closer together, but really listen to your body. I like my knees hip distance. And then for melting heart, we have our hips pretty high on top of the knees. We don't drop our hips back towards the heels like our child's pose. So figuring out the base here. And then we'll bring our right arm onto the wheel. And the wheel is just a little offset of center towards the right. All right. Now from here, right hand's going to stay right on top of the wheel. Left hand comes underneath your left shoulder. And we're going to slowly guide ourselves down into this one-armed melting heart. Now take some time here. If your forehead doesn't touch the mat, which is totally fine, let that left hand be support for you. All right, so put some pressure in that left hand as you start to guide the forehead down towards the mat, stopping at whatever point feels best for you. Now if the forehead does come all the way down to the mat, you can make that journey. Either way, wherever you end up, and start to push down with the right armpit, securing the top of your shoulder. So that nice gentle rotation of the right armpit down towards the ground, not forcing it, just a little coaxing, a little bit of gravity working in your direction. We'll take about 5 more breaths here. Let those hips be nice and high. As you start to find more depth, maybe that left hand can get a little more release to it, and bringing your forehead closer to the mat. We have 2 more breaths here. Last breath. All right, now we're going to gently press back into your left hand. Rise all the way back up. And then reach this right arm high. And on the exhale, thread the needle. Right arm comes underneath your left arm. The hips are still high into the air. This is very similar to a melting heart with our thread the needle variation. So to roll your left armpit down towards your right bicep. Just a couple more breaths here. Not here for too much longer. Just finding some release and a different stretch for this right shoulder. Last breath. And as you release, slowly lift the body back up. Raise the right arm in towards the air. Get some space into the chest. And on the exhale, right hand comes down. And we'll switch sides. Walk the wheel off to your left side, so just a little left of center. Knees are hip distance apart, so that melting heart variation with the left arm this time. Right hand is your guide, so press into the right palm. Slowly let the body start to melt down. The chin and chest are sloping down towards the ground. Now remember that right hand is your guide this time, so if you need support, let that right hand be your support. But if your forehead comes down to the mat, which is not the ultimate goal, it's just a journey that we can take. So if it's not there, you're totally fine. Support yourself with that right hand. Now here for about another, let's say about 20 seconds or so. So that same kind of idea, we're engaging through the top shoulder and gently starting to press down through the left armpit using gravity, using a little bit of force, not much at all, just that little coaxing of the left armpit down. Hips are high into the air. Maybe finding a flare through the sits bones. That might add a little bit more pressure down into towards the chest. I think about 2 breaths here. Last breath. And now pressing into your right hand, we're going to lift all the way up. Left arm lifts towards the ceiling, get some space in the chest. And on the exhale, thread your needle from your melting heart variation. Left arm comes underneath the right armpit. Right arm can extend out long. And then putting gentle pressure into your left shoulder. Start to rock your right bicep down towards your left bicep. Just a couple more breaths here. Not forcing the right shoulder down, just moving it in that direction. Hips are high, flare through the sits bones for this last breath. And then slowly release. Right hand might need to come in to get the support to lift the left arm high. And then exhale, left hand comes down. And let's move the wheel into center. We'll take melting heart with both hands. Okay, so this is our last variation of melting heart before we take a little break on the shoulders. So knees hip distance apart. Make the adjustment if you need to. This time the wheel is dead center. Both hands on top of the wheel. And slowly let the chin and chest come down. Now for this variation, we don't have a support hand. So if your head does not come down towards the ground, I would say keep your ears right by your biceps and start to press your sternum towards the ground. And if your forehead does come down to the ground, you find whatever depth feels good for you. For me personally, once my forehead touches the ground, I like to push the wheel gently away from my body as I drop my arms and my armpits down towards the ground. So just intensifying that stretch. And we got about another 10 seconds here. Find a portion or a part of this pose that might be challenging for you. Maybe adding on a little bit. All right, so last set here. We're going to come into full melting heart. All right, now for our last set, we're going to come into melting heart with both arms. So keeping our knees hip distance apart, so same base we had when we started. Hips are nice and high. Both hands are on top of the wheel this time. We're going to slowly let the chin and chest come down towards the ground. Now, only about 30 seconds here. So we've already done a lot of work on the shoulders. We're just going to finish it off in a more uniform kind of way. Now, if your head doesn't come down to the ground, keep your ears right in line with your biceps and let your sternum and your chin and chest start to melt towards that direction. And if your forehead does come down to the ground, and take whatever variation feels nice. For me, I like to push the wheel away gently as I drop my armpits towards the ground, feeling that big stretch in the chest and underneath the arms, little compression in the shoulders. Take one more big round of breath. And then slowly, let's roll our hips all the way back to our heels. and come up into a seat. And then round the shoulders a few times. Make some big exaggerated circles back with the shoulders. One more time. And we'll do that same thing going forward. About 5 times. Big rounding of the shoulders. And then maybe some little non-uniform movements. All right, nice job. Okay, now we're gonna come into start to work on our quads a little bit. So first off, starting in a long crescent lunge with the wheel on our left quad. All right, so we're gonna use the wheel as a foam roller here for a few breaths. Right knee is stacked right on top of the right ankle. Left thigh is right on top of the wheel, and we're rocking forward and back. So finding some movement here. Starting to massage out the top of our left leg, which is our quad. So finding some nice movement here. If you want to keep your left toes on the ground to control your depth, you can. If you want to add a little bit more pressure into that left leg, lift your left toes off the ground, and then find that rocking motion again. Little movements forward and back. Let's take about 2 more passes here. All right, now pause here. We're going to take a twist. So plant your left hand right underneath your left shoulder. And then we're going to bend the left knee. Find your balance here. Right arm's going to reach back and grab for the top of your left foot. Now if you can't grab the foot, just reach in that direction. If you can grab the foot, hold on to the foot. Maybe start to kick into the hand and really engage that left quad. Now once you find your stability, maybe start to add that rocking motion in again. So very engaged in that left quad, so this might be very intense for you. So take your time. We'll be here for about 10 more seconds. Gazing down towards your left hand might help with your balance. Gazing over your right shoulder might give a little more of a challenge. Last breath. All right, pause your movement. Gently release the back leg. Try not to let it slingshot down. And then we'll remove the wheel, drop your left knee to the mat, and we'll keep our right knee right on top of our right ankle and bring the wheel underneath the right quad, or I'm sorry, the right hamstring and behind the right calf. All right, so moving into a crescent moon variation. My left knee is pretty far back, so I can really open up through my left hip flexor. So move that variation whatever feels good for you, starting maybe with the knee right underneath the hip and adding a little bit more flexibility by walking your left knee back. All right, from here, we'll bring our hands to our hips, start to find some stability in your hips. So that left hip moves forward, right hip moves back. And press your right heel on the mat to pull the right hip back. And you can press your left toes in the mat to push your left hip forward. All right, feeling your left hip flexor very engaged and open. We're going to lift the arms in towards the ceiling. Now start to feel the length in the spine. Now we were talking about earlier by pulling the right heel back and pushing the left hip forward. So keep that momentum moving in the hips. All right, so nice stable in the hips, and then lengthen the arms above the head. Pinky fingers rotate in towards each other. Now you can stay right here with the arms above the head. If you want to move this into a back bend of whatever variation, whether it's elbows bent, hands that are laced, whatever variation feels best for you in your practice right now. We'll be here for about another 30 seconds. All right, so the back bend can be your focus. The hip flexors can be your focus. Whatever feels best for you. Really keep that left hip moving forward when we're moving into our back bend. Sometimes our hips want to go back and get a little squirrely. Let's find your deepest pose that you want to get into right now. And take 3 breaths. Slowly rise on the inhale. Let's bring our hands down to the mat. And we'll take a half splits with the wheel. Okay? So I'm going to sit back first, roll the wheel up to where my ankle is, and then lift my foot right on top of the wheel. Now if there's a smoother way you want to get into that as far as just rolling back and your hamstrings can handle that, go right ahead. So this is a nice counter pose. It could be counter pose for your back bend. So bringing our leg nice and high on this wheel, you can start to bring your gaze down towards your back knee. So if you took a pretty intense back bend, You can start to find a roundness in the spine in the opposite direction while we're still opening up through this hamstring. Let's take one more breath here. And then slowly rise yourself up. And then we'll take our foot off the wheel. And then move into our opposite side. So roll the wheel back towards your right leg. We're going to take that crescent lunge variation first. So left knee on top of left ankle. Roll the wheel back to the top of your right quad. Hands framing this left foot. The right toes are on the mat. We'll start that rocking motion we did on the other side. So gentle rock forward and back. Putting some pressure into your your right quad. And you're in control of that pressure. So if you want more, you can press deeper into your right leg or maybe even lift your right toes off the mat. And if you want less, press into your right toes and keep the pressure light into that right leg. And then breathe here. Finding some movement. We'll take another about 3 or 4 passes here. All right, now moving into our twist. Pause first. Right hand plants just about underneath that right shoulder. And then we'll bend the right leg. Gaze starts to shift over your left shoulder. And then we'll reach our left hand back. Maybe just in the general direction of that right foot. Or if you can grab the foot, go ahead and grab the foot. Maybe kicking into the hand to activate through the quad. Maybe feeling it all the way up into your hip flexor. And then we'll move here. Rocking forward and back if that feels good. Gaze can come down to your right hand for a little more stability or up over your left shoulder for a little more of a challenge. Nice and engaged. Take 3 more passes here. All right, now pause here. Gentle release of the back leg, so don't let it slingshot down, guide it down. Support the body. We'll remove the wheel. And take the wheel underneath our left leg. Drop the right knee to the mat, crescent moon pose, other side. So wheel behind left calf, underneath left hamstring. Right knee is onto the ground. And then you can see a little bit easier on this side how far back I like to have my knee. Right? So maybe right underneath your hip works for you. I like to have it a little farther back to give myself a little more activity in that right hip flexor. All right, stable the hips. This time your left heel digging into the mat to pull your left hip back. Right foot is pressing into the mat to push the right hip forward. Now once you're feeling stable, arms lift above the head. And then check back in with your hips. Make sure that right hip is pressing forward, the left hip is pulling back. And then gaze shifting up, maybe moving into your back bend variations, elbows bending, hands interlacing. So whatever variation you took on the other side, we'll start to move there for about another 30 seconds or so. And as you find your back bends, sometimes that right hip might want to come back and the left hip pushes forward. Really mindful of your stability here and your alignment. So push your right hip forward, pull the left hip back as you find your depth, continuously readjusting. Finding your depth. Last 3 breaths here. Inhale brings us up. Hands come down to the mat, frame this left foot. And then we'll take our half splits variation with the wheel. I like to rock back, place the wheel where it needs to be, and then place my foot on top of the wheel. My hamstrings personally are very tight, so that transition back for me is just really, really tough. So get into it the way you know how, and that's safe for you. And then we'll start to fall and fold over this left leg. And if you found that variation where we brought our gaze down towards the back knee, helpful to recover from your back bend and start to bring your gaze towards that right knee. Couple more breaths. Last breath here. All right, and then slowly rise up. Remove your foot from the wheel. All right, so last 2 active poses. We have our forearm wheel, and then we're going to move into that full camel variation we talked about. Okay, so for forearm wheel, it's very similar to our warm-up we took earlier. Just going to add some more intensity to it, and it's a really good prep for our camel pose. Okay, so bringing our feet to the ground, knees hip distance apart, wheel into our upper back this time. Reach up and over the head, grab the wheel so your thumbs are on the cushion side, on the outside, and then your fingers are on the plasticky side or the material side on the inside. Elbow squeeze it next to your ears for good rotation of the shoulders. All right, now press into the heels, lift the hips, and start to drive the elbows towards the ground. Walking your heels in towards your hips as you move your elbows towards the ground will help you stabilize your base. So now my elbows are on the ground. Heels are just a little inside my knees. All right, I'm going to push into my elbows and then slowly lift my upper back off the wheel. And then find some breaths here. You don't have to stay off the wheel. You can come up and come down, or if it feels good, really press off the wheel. And then find a variation that's challenging for you. So for me, this is bringing my chin towards my chest and looking up, really activating through my upper back. And then maybe start to walk my toes towards the wheel and drop my head back. So whatever variation, think about another 10 more seconds here. You can find a little bit of movement, a little rocking forward and back to work really deep into the shoulders. Press into the toes, lift up through the hip flexors. Nice, find your peak variation for one more breath. Then slowly start to come back onto the wheel. And then we'll make our way back onto our bums. Grab our shins, come forward just like our recovery before. Grab the front of the shins, chin to your chest, take an inhale, lift through the crown of the head. Squeeze towards center on the exhale. One more breath like that. Inhale. Exhale. All right. Now, working into our full Ustrasana today. Okay, so we're going to come onto our shins. So we're on our knees. Knees are hip distance apart. All right, so feet are about hip distance apart as well. So we want hip distance because the deeper you get into this pose, the more the wheel will roll down your lower back. And if your feet are in the way, then you can't get as deep as you want to get. So widen those feet out. If this is your first time in the pose, what I would recommend is bring the wheel pretty close to your upper back. So you can reach back pretty easily, grabbing onto the wheel. Thumbs on the cushion side, fingers on the material side on the inside. Elbows hugging next to the ears. Slowly drop the head back. And then maybe start to engage the glutes, press through the tops of your feet, and see if you can lift your hips. And find about 3 breaths here. Keep the glutes engaged, press through the toes, lift through the hips, take one more breath. And then we'll let the hips come back down to the ground, gently release the wheel, and slowly come back up. So we're going to keep doing that until we find a depth that is challenging for us. And if that was the depth that's challenging for you, then stay right there, go back into it, take 3 breaths, and come out. If you want to find more depth, what I would recommend is come out of this, roll the wheel about 1 inch down your spine, something that might be a little more challenging for you. Come back into it, grab the wheel, set this up, elbow squeeze in, and then we slowly find our depth. Take 3 breaths. Always good to find about 3 breaths in a deep pose, just so you know that you're there with purpose. One more breath. And then gently release, come back up. And we'll go one more time. So finding some more depth, maybe rolling your wheel all the way down towards your tailbone or coming back to wherever you feel challenged. Grabbing onto the wheel. The deeper you get, the harder the wheel might become to grab. So using your other hand to help the hand grab the wheel, things of that variation. And then maybe one day your elbows come down to the ground. Walking your fingers in towards the center of the wheel. Maybe bringing the crown of the head to the ground. Press to the tops of the feet. Find that variation that fits you best for this practice and for this day. It's finding that depth of pose. And we got one more breath here. And slowly release the wheel. Slowly bring yourself back up. And then for our counter pose, remove the wheel. Bring the knees together. We'll move into an embryo pose. We let the torso collapse on top of the legs, arms reach down by the sides, and the forehead rests on the mat. Now for me, my forehead's lifted so I don't crush the mic. So let your forehead come down to the mat or as close as it to you can, and just find a lot of relief here. One more breath. And then gently rise up. All right, spin around, sit on your bums. So anytime I do some deep back bends, I really like to end with twists. So let's slide our legs in between the wheel or in the middle of the wheel. So just a variation of a twist with the wheel. Right hand comes behind us, left hand comes on the opposite side of the wheel. Now from here, press into the right fingertips, lift through the spine. And on the exhale, press into that left hand and slowly bring your gaze over your right shoulder. Nice. We'll do a few more like that. On the inhales, pressing into your right fingertips to lengthen the spine. And on the exhale, press into the left hand, take our twist. One more breath, inhale. Twist on the exhale. And slowly release back to center. And then we'll move right into our other side. Left fingers walk behind us. Right hand comes onto the left side of the wheel. Press into the left fingertips on the inhale, lengthen through the spine. And as we exhale, we gaze over our left shoulder. Nice big twist on the inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale, gaze over left shoulder. One more time, breath in. Twist, exhale. And release, bringing the gaze forward. Legs out from inside of the wheel. And then rock onto your backs. Bring your knees into your chest. And grab onto the shins. You maybe reach across the shins and grab with the fingertips. Little tuck of the chin towards the chest to lengthen your neck. And start to roll your lower back down towards the ground. So as much of our vertebrae on the ground as we can. And take one more breath here. Squeeze everything towards center on the exhale. And release into your final Shavasana. Legs long, arms to your sides. And find some breath here. Thank you so much for joining me today. Stay in your final Shavasana as long as you like. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Subscribe to the channel if you appreciate it, and give us a thumbs up if you like the video. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Namaste.